It's as close to time travel as we're gonna get. This Week in Music History with Marty Miller.
Hello there, this is Marty. This week we're going through the week of October 21st until 25th. The week, Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards on
drugs. It's taken its toll on us, the road work.
John Lennon's killer does something really creepy in 1980.
In the log sheet where he signed in, he instead of signing his regular name, he signed John Lennon.
And life advice from a birthday boy.
Knowledge is power. Guys, I can't stress this enough to you.
Let's do the week.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.
In 1992, George Michael took Sony Records to court in a fight over his contract with the company. He lost the case in 1994. But the strange thing is, George Michael worked with Sony again less than 10 years later, which is quite impressive considering he accused them of professional slavery at one stage.
Check this out then. Modern day Elvis. George is authentic. He's fearless.
You can hear pain, you can hear joy, you can hear everything in George Michael.
It's really sexy.
I want to leave songs that will mean something.
Toto guitarist and session player extraordinaire Steve Lukather has a birthday this week. He's a fella who likes to work hard and play hard. Here he is with some life advice for you and me.
So I started out by ear. My parents said, well, you got to learn how to do this the right way. You should study music. Studying music uses a different part of the brain. It helps you with mathematics. It helps you with other things. It helps you with problem solving, just simple intellect. Stimulating parts of your brain to make you a thinking person and also a creative person. You have to learn things. Knowledge is power. Guys, I can't stress this enough to you.
This week in 1990, Pearl Jam played their first ever gig when they appeared at the Off-Ramp venue in Seattle. Funny enough, first ever live show, but a very now familiar tune.
This Week in Music History, a week in less than 10 minutes.
In 1980, I know some people would have you not ever say his name. I don't think we should ever forget his name because of the evil. The man who killed John Lennon, Mark David Chapman, quit his security job and signed out for the very last time. And instead of the usual Chappie that he normally wrote, he scribbled John Lennon.
Then Chapman resigned his job with a bizarre gesture.
On the last day that he worked, in the log sheet where he signed in, he instead of signing his regular name, he signed John Lennon.
What day was that?
October 23rd.
Chapman was now totally gripped by his obsession and was preparing to express his hatred in action. 4 days later, he went to this gun store and bought a .38 Charter Arms special handgun.
In 1995, this week, Def Leppard gave themselves a place in the Guinness Book of World Records. How? Well, by playing 3 shows in 3 continents in 24 hours. They played Tangier, London and Vancouver. Here's the boys on a plane somewhere.
We're looking forward to it. It's a challenge, and nobody's ever done this before, so somebody's got to do it for the first time. Why not? It'd be us. We always like breaking barriers, and the Guinness Book of Records are on hand. If he puts us in there, that's all right with us.
Back to 1977 we go, and Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards was in trouble with the courts and fined a couple of quid after admitting having cannabis, Chinese heroin, Mandrix tablets and a revolver in his house in London. Later in the evening, Keith and Anita Pallenberg, his other half at the time, accidentally set fire to their London hotel bedroom. So clearly not enough to have a house in London, you have to stay in hotels too. Keith admits, though, there were some dark times on the drugs.
Drugs, it's taken its toll on us, the road work. And these guys are older and they're all together. And you say, how do you do this, man? What's the secret? Well, you take one of these, you smoke a little bit. The penny drops, getting in is easy, getting out is difficult. You know, it took me a while.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.
Very over-the-top behaviour. In 1998, former Stone Roses lead singer Ian Brown was jailed for 4 months after being found guilty of disorderly behaviour on a flight from Paris to Manchester. How can you get into so much trouble on such a short flight? From the news back in 98.
The former lead singer of the Manchester band The Stone Roses starts a 4-month prison sentence tonight after being found guilty of using threatening behaviour towards an air stewardess and to the captain on a British Airways flight.
The court heard how Brown had told air stewardess Christine Cooper that he'd chop off her hands after she'd gestured towards him, offering him duty-free goods. She'd apologised, but he'd continued to be aggressive and threatened her. Later, he'd approached the flight deck, banging on the door.
Rolling Stones appeared for the very first time on The Ed Sullivan Show from New York in 1964, doing Around and Around and Time Is On My Side. A riot broke out in the studio, making Ed Sullivan say, "I promise you they will never be back on our show again." Rolling Stones went on to make 5 further appearances on Ed Sullivan's show between 65 and 1969.
Live from New York, it's The Ed Sullivan Show.
The Rolling Stones.
And that is a look at this week in music history. We've just gone through the week of October 21st until 25th. Hope you learned something. If you didn't, don't blame me. You weren't listening well enough.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.